effectively trying to make the case for why I think Bitcoin is a truly civilizational technology. It's a technology that is going to make a huge difference to our civilization. So what I do in this is I try and summarize the ideas of some of the great Austrian economists who have become a lot more popular recently because of Bitcoin, because they believe that money is something that is created by the state. And they believe that money is not a tool, they believe that the money is something that's created by the market. It emerges on the market and the state co-opts it, and when it co-opts it, it compromises the ability of people to use it properly to benefit itself. So it allows itself to spend more at the expense of its citizens. So why is the Austrian school so important? Because the Austrian school shows us that money can work without it needing to be the creature of the state. And so therefore, when you look at Bitcoin working, and you see that Bitcoin can operate without it needing a government agency being in charge of it, without it needing a government agency to give it value or to dictate its price, you see a live refutation of the state theory of money, a live refutation of the idea that the government is needed in order for money to work. And so therefore, that makes people curious about what else are they wrong about? What else are the economics textbooks that we've learned wrong? And so people start digging into Austrian economics.
여러분은 사이페딘아모스가 하는 말이 어떤 의미인지 이해하셨나요? 여러 비트코인 투자자들이 하나같이 말하는 비트코인의 가장 큰 장점은 그 누구도 비트코인을 뺏어갈 수 없다라는 점입니다. 여러분의 돈은 여러분들도 모르게 매번 세금으로 뺏기고 정부가 매년 빚을 져서 발행하는 화폐 때문에 세금이 계속 올라가고 들고 있는 화폐의 가치마저 희석이 되기 때문에 여러 번에 걸쳐서 내 돈은 서서히 부서지고 맙니다. 비트코인은 이런 외부의 공격이 통하지 않는 유일한 자산이라는 점입니다. 이제부터 나올 내용은 여러분들의 경제관념을 바꿔줄 것입니다.
If you want to think about what economics is human beings acting and making decisions under the context of scarcity. The reason that we have economics is because we have scarcity. We have scarcity because it's a lot easier to want things than it is to make them. It's a lot easier to want a Ferrari. Who here has ever wanted a Ferrari? Everybody. Who here has ever made a Ferrari? Nobody. See, it's a lot easier to want things than to make them. And that's the beginning of all of our problems in economics. We see nice things, we want them, but we don't want to put in the effort needed in order to make them happen. It takes a lot more effort to make things happen. So we're constantly making decisions in a context of scarcity. Those decisions are economics. So what do people do? When they economize? The most obvious thing we do by economizing is labor. Something we do and animals do. You're hungry, you see a nice deer jumping around, you chase the deer, you catch it, you have a giant party with your friends. That's labor. You've worked, you've produced something, food, it's given you the nutrition you need, and so you've economized. That's the simplest, most basic thing. Animals and humans can do it. But we have things that animals don't have. And the most important, or the most foundational of those things, is the concept of property. We develop the concept of property. Animals can't develop that, or if they do, they develop it in a very limited way. But we develop the concept of property, and we develop it in a social context. Not just me, I take this as mine when I live on an island alone. I live on an island with millions of people, and we can all agree. If we're able to develop the concept of property, we're able to begin to economize in a very different way from animals, because we start becoming able to think of the future. Because now you don't need to build a house every day. You don't need to find a new house every day. You can build a house that'll last you for 10 years or 100 years. We develop the form of property that is used for economic production, which is capital. And that's a huge thing. That's the major superpower that we as human beings have. And capital refers to things that are property that we use not because we want it, we don't consume it, we don't eat it. We use it in order to produce other things that we want. And so once we're able to develop this concept of capital, because we are able to take property and things and hold on to them and become secure in them, because we establish an understanding that this is my capital, that's your capital, then it becomes meaningful for me to invest in building machinery that increases my productivity, because I have security in the fact that I know that I'm going to be able to keep this machinery. What else do we do to economize? We trade. We start trading with one another. We realize that trading with one another increases our productivity enormously because it allows us to specialize. And then the bigger the circle of people that we trade with, the more we can specialize, the higher our productivity and the better off our standard of living becomes. You can't trade with others if you are an animal that bites people when you meet them. You have to develop civilized manners for dealing with others. And so that forces us to become civilized in the manner that we understand, as in being civil. So then, after we think about trade, when trade grows, when the circle of people that we trade with grows, we can no longer trade directly. We need to trade indirectly, and that's the development of money. And so the next step in our economizing process is that we develop money as a tool, and we start using it. You can trade with anybody in the world because everybody uses the same money, and so you're able to trade with them. Now, with money available, we are able to then understand how a market economy functions. And the market economy functions because of economic calculation. The reason that we have a modern economy where we have the incredibly high standards of living that we have and the incredibly high productivity that we have is because of economic calculation. And economic calculation is what allows economic production to take place, because it's how capitalists and entrepreneurs allocate the capital into production processes. And that requires money, and that requires an acceptance of property rights, and that requires security of property rights, and that requires a civilized society that is able to deal with one another. So you see, now we've built up all this edifice of all the things that allow us to economize as human beings. And we see the end result is, if you want to have a modern capitalist economy, which is what some countries in Europe and the West have had over the last 100 to 200 years. So how is this related to Bitcoin? Why did I take you on this giant detour? Because I think the biggest problem that the world currently faces is the fact that this entire edifice all relies on money. What holds everything together is money. The glue that holds human civilization together is money. The reason we are able to trade with one another, the reason we're able to make economic calculation and decide how to use our capital goods is money. And when you destroy money, when you ruin money, you make everything else less functional, and we see civilization entirely breaking down from the top down. You see how all forms of economic and social cooperation begin to fall apart as a mechanism for people to hold on to value for the future. And so all the processes of economizing, we expect to provide for our future less in the future, so we discount the future more, so we become more present-oriented. You see that there's been a historical trend of interest rates declining over 5,000 years. Why? Interest rates decline. We as humans have developed better forms of saving for the future, better forms of money. And when we have a better form of money, so the more we develop harder money, the harder our money is, the more we can provide for the future, the more we become future-oriented, the more we delay gratification, the more we save, the more we take some of the resources that we could consume and enjoy today and instead put them in savings so that we could use them tomorrow. And then the beginning of the 20th century, when humanity moves off of gold to an easy money, which is government money, you see the process reversed. You see interest rates begin to rise. And you see all of these processes of civilization really begin to reverse. You see people becoming more and more at conflict with one another because the money that allows them to coordinate with one another is broken. So therefore the benefits of cooperation are being compromised. And you see this being reflected everywhere. You see it that in global trade breaks down at the time when money breaks down. And that was a major driver of World War II. In the 1930s, all of the protectionism, that was all because of the breakdown of money. The bad money causes us to raise our time preference, so we start saving less. So that means less capital is available. That means we have less ability to be productive. All of the forms of economizing that we use as human beings are being compromised because they all need a form of money that is not broken. And that is, in my opinion, the overarching problem of economics of the 20th century. We are a species that is constantly improving as a moral being by constantly becoming more future-oriented, by constantly finding harder and better money. We find the harder money, we can save more for the future. That allows us to become more future-oriented, we become more cooperative, more peaceful. We start saving more, we get better off. We move to a bad money, and now we see what's happened is that basically we've developed all these technologies and institutions and ways of dealing with each other that rely on people being civilized, but we destroyed the money, so we went back to primitive money that doesn't allow people to be civilized anymore. And so these institutions begin to fall apart.
부자들의 지적은 항상 변함없습니다. 화폐가 약해진다. 우리는 1년, 2년이 지나고 매번 오르는 물가를 체감하면서도 월급은 오르지 않습니다. 뉴스를 보면 자영업자 폐업률, 부동산 공실 등 안 좋은 이야기만 나오죠. 경제 상황이 좋아졌다 라는 말을 거의 들은 적이 없습니다. 인류는 계속 더 단단한 가치를 가진 화폐를 찾아왔습니다. 유명한 예로 일론 머스크는 세금을 줄이기 위해 가진 돈을 거의 모두 주식으로 보유하죠. 그리고 세금을 내는 대신 가진 주식으로 은행에서 빚을 집니다. 담보가치인 일론 머스크의 자회사가 워낙 튼튼하고 신뢰가 높기 때문에 몇십 프로의 세금 대신에 엄청나게 저렴한 저금리로 필요한 자금을 충당할 수 있게 되죠. 비트코인이 바로 탈중앙화의 개념으로 개인들도 자기 자본을 지킬 수 있는 수단이 탄생하게 된 겁니다. 그렇다고 비트코인을 아무 때나 살 수는 없겠죠. 저희 앤드류 트레이딩 팀에서는 비트코인을 기술적으로 분석해서 이번 반감기에 어디까지 상승할지 혹은 상승이 누락된다면 어디까지 빠졌다가 반등할 수 있을지 다 분석을 하고 매매를 합니다. 구독자분들을 위해서 제가 직접 관점을 공유드리는 방을 운영하고 있으니 더보기란과 고정 댓글에서 확인해 주시면 됩니다. 나머지 영상 이어서 보시죠.
The world around us was built by people like this beautiful building. It was built by people in the 19th century who had a very low time preference. And today, we have a lot higher time preference because we don't have the ability to save like they did. So we can't build things like this. We can't do nice things like this. And we're not able to maintain the nice things that we have. We're seeing all the aspects of civilization crumbling around us. Our money is making us more animalistic. It's reversing our progress as human beings. It's causing interest rates to rise in the long term, whereas they should be dropping in the long term. It's causing all kinds of economic problems. And so, all of this is to go back to answer the question on Bitcoin. I think this is why Bitcoin ultimately matters, because it is the only way that we can opt out of this monetary system that is broken, out of the money that is not working, out of the money that is basically built to rob you. And we are stuck in a situation that at the end of the gold standard, money was captured by governments because gold has to be centralized in order for it to work, for its clearance. And therefore governments essentially caught and captured money and therefore made it impossible for people to use money other than their money. And this has been the case for the past century. Well, now we have an alternative. Now we have a way out. And now it's possible for anybody to store the wealth that they have in a form of money that doesn't devalue over time. It's possible for anybody to cooperate with anybody else and trade with them from anywhere to anywhere without having to rely on the money that is produced by governments. All of this together, I believe, is why it is such a big deal that we have Bitcoin and why I think Bitcoin is going to continue to amaze the world with the impact that it has.